First of all, welcome everybody to this morning session relating to the New South Wales Government's Going Global Export Program, and specifically around the cyber security component of that program. I'd also like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we are meeting on today, the Gadigal people and the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to those elders past and present. Just a few little housekeeping things for today's session, try and keep it going smoothly. Please be patient with the technology. If it happens to be misbehaving along the way, we will do our best to make it run as smoothly as we can. Can I ask that all attendees make sure that they're muted throughout the session? Instant messaging will be available through the chat system on the Teams platform. Please, be sure to note that anything you write in the chat will be visible by all other attendees. So if there's any commercial incompetence there that you don't want to expose, please don't put it in there. The webinar will be recorded for the purposes of placing on our website for other people to refer back to, or yourselves to refer back to. So please kindly keep your webcam off if you've got any privacy concerns relating to that. Thank you. My name's Warwick Scherf. I'm the Associate Director of Export Programs here at Investment New South Wales. I've got a commercial background in the food sector, primarily in consumer foods and industrial foods, and have been heavily involved in the agribusiness and produce area over my career. I've been particularly involved in exports to the Asia and the Pacific, and I've dealt with industry-wide export programs at a national level as well. That's probably it for me. We've got a long program today, so I just want to make sure that we keep on time. We've got a number of speakers that will be talking to you about their individual markets and the programs that they're offering for those markets. I'll try to keep everybody on track thereabouts, but we have got a good segment at the end to answer specific questions that you may have, and to run through any steps we may have in terms of your interest in the program and being involved in the program. The speakers that will talk to you today, outside me, I'll just be emceeing mostly, will be Sean McAlpine, Vicky Clare and Mike Newman. They're all got strong credentials in the markets that they are representing and the sectors that they're working with. And so I think you'll find that what they've got to say is pretty interesting about what's going on in those markets at this point in time. And hopefully there'll be a real interest for you inside the US and Japan with respect to the cybersecurity sector. I just want to talk to you a little bit about the Going Global program more broadly, very briefly, and why we are running this program, why the New South Wales Government is looking to support businesses from a very small level, startups if you like, right through to those that are reasonably accomplished in the domestic market and looking to grow their global sales offshore. It is a multi-month intensive program. It really relates to trying to provide businesses with the competency and the capability to enter the markets of their desire with all the capability and credentials that are going to make them successful. We run this program through a combination of our own in-house capabilities and services, but we also look to partner experts from the private sector that have a lot of skill and experience in those markets, in those sectors, to support the coaching, the mentoring and the business matching processes that really underpin the program and are fundamental to what we're offering. What we're trying to do is give each business a richer understanding of their market, and then give them the preparedness to go into that market through pitch training and really trying to refine down what they're offering that might be for those businesses into that particular market sector. As you can see there, we're running across a number of different industry sectors, technology being one, and cybersecurity being a subset of that. We're also running health and medtech streams. We're running an e-commerce program primarily around food and beverage and nutraceuticals to Asia and India. And we're also running a fairly extensive food and beverage program as well. But we're here today to talk about the cybersecurity two streams, which you'll see off to the right there for Japan and for the United States. Next slide, please. I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce Sean. Sean's a recent acquisition to the team here at Investment New South Wales, and he's the New South Wales Trade Investment Director situated in San Francisco. As you can see from his little blurb there, he's got a strong background in this space and certainly understands the cybersecurity sector pretty well from both a trade point of view and an investment point of view. So he's certainly the one to talk to that may be able to give you some information, more information offline around this. But today he's going to talk about the program to the US for cybersecurity in fairly general terms. Over to you, Sean.
Thanks, Warwick. Appreciate the intro. Good to meet everybody. As Warwick just said, I'm going to give a quick overview of what we see happening here in the US before I hand it over to Vicky Clare, my colleague in Sydney, to talk about the program that she and her team have put together that's upcoming. So in terms of the size of the opportunity in the US, I understand that the market size is different sort of based on definition, but based on global projections from about 2019, there was a size of $145 billion, and that's kind of growing to $270 billion through 2026. And the US is part of that. It's by far the largest global market in cybersecurity. We sort of project that it's worth about $60 billion in 2019 alone and growing. The US also accounts for over 3/4 of global VC funding for cyber companies specifically, and about half of that comes from California itself. There's been a gradual shift as well from a VC perspective in terms of deal stage share over the last 5 years from seed to Series A. In 2016, a third of all cyber raises were at the seed stage, while 22% or so were at the Series A stage. And by 2020, that's kind of switched around. So about 27% in 2020 were Series A deals, and seed stages kind of dropped to below a quarter. As well as that, the average deal size has skyrocketed from about 10 million in 2016 to about 27 million last year. Through the first half of this calendar year alone, we've also seen over about $11 billion raised in VC across 400 deals in the US just in the first 6 months of the year. And at the same time, that's $40 billion in M&A activity and a 16 to 17% increase in share prices across US publicly traded companies alone. That outperforms, for context, both the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 over the same year. Over the same 6 months, sorry. As the deck here says, there's demand across all sort of distinct technology priorities that companies face in the US, whether that's in data management or cloud security, privacy solutions, risk assessment and management, threat intelligence, identity and access management, and others. I should also highlight that from a US federal government perspective, they spent about 17 billion plus on cybersecurity alone last year, and the current administration has committed to significantly increasing that over the next years and moving forward. As you'll see at the bottom there, Australia also has a trusted relationship with the US as a Five Eyes member, and that means that Australian companies have access to US federal government procurement and 31 state procurement markets as well. And Vicky will be able to highlight where our program will touch on that specific opportunity, as well as everything else that we have planned over the length of the session. So I look forward to speaking to many of you as you apply and as you look to expand in the US. And I'd like to hand it over to Vicky to give some details around the specifics of the program that we have in store.
Great, thanks, Sean. That was a great overview of the vast opportunities that there are for cybersecurity companies across the US. a little bit about myself. I've recently returned from living in San Francisco, as it says there, for 4 years, where I kind of soaked up all things startup life. So it's great to be back in New South Wales, in Sydney now, helping New South Wales technology companies go global. So if I can have the next slide, please. Now, this is a bit more I want to share with you about the program itself. As we know, the opportunities in the US are vast. And so to capitalize on those opportunities, you really have to focus. And this is the aim of our program. So I've just kind of stepped through some of the key elements there for you. In the introduction horizontal that you see there, we're going to kick off in November. And welcoming and introductions, we really want to get to know you and what your US export aspirations are. And once we've done that, and we also want the cohort to really get to know all the other cyber companies taking part as well. And once we've done that, we're going to jump straight into, as you see there, hacking US procurement. So that's really selling into the US. And we're going to have a US-based service provider working with you on this piece. And it's going to really develop a deeper understanding for you of doing business in the US. So around pricing, around IP, and essentially develop your export strategy for success. And part of that, really importantly, will include how to effectively market your business to the United States federal government. From selling into the US, we're going to jump next to pitch coaching. And personally, having lived in the Bay Area and worked across the US, I think you can never get enough practice with your pitch coaching, right? Kind of honing your pitch and just improving it. So we really want to work with you on that. And so specific for the American audience, the American market. And again, we have a different service provider that we will be working with who really has niche expertise in this area so that you can really hone your skills in negotiating with American customers, American partners, and perfect your pitch. Then we move across to the preparation horizontal that you see there, and the months that will be happening December through January. And we're going to kick off with the US state deep dives. So one of the great sort of knowledge areas that you're able to tap into when you take part in this Going Global program for the US is the deep relationships that we have by way of our colleagues based in San Francisco, that's Sean and my other colleague, Joe Kashafer. We have deep relationships with US states that are relevant to the New South Wales sector priorities. So for cybersecurity, we see US state deep dives as being important in ecosystems for you to be across as to where best to put your boots on the ground. And we're going to be looking at California, DC, and Denver, Colorado. The next thing there, you see US war stories, Aussie founders. A great way to kind of learn about the US market is hearing about those serial entrepreneurs specifically who have cybersecurity companies that have had success and many fast fails along the way in the US. And so we have relationships with those founders, and we really want you to connect with them and for them to kind of share some of those stories with you, because whilst they can share with you how they got their first customer, you know, how they had success in raising venture capital, what's really important for you to hear as well is what didn't work for them and why. That, you know, time is the most important thing a founder has, I believe. And so you being able to really put your time in the places that you need to goes a long way to kind of ensuring your success. So if you can learn from somebody else's mistakes, I think it's really valuable experience to take. Then the next part there, you see the in-market tailored support. That's going to be ongoing as we get to know you. But I just put it there in terms of the preparation as well, because, you know, you might come to us at different parts in the program and say, you know, I really need to solve for this piece. I really need to solve for that piece. And that's something we can work with our colleagues based in San Francisco to, you know, whether it's your first US hire, whether it's you want to incorporate and you want to understand the Delaware C Corp. Those are all kind of pieces that we can in market offer you that tailored support. And then the horizontal layer engagement, that's going to take place February through to April. Business matching is going to be undertaken by a US-based service provider, and it's really to help you get your first customer. Maybe you have your first customer. Who wouldn't love more US customers? And really, you know, sort of getting to work with you in a really niche way to get you those introductions. Then the next part there, we've got the California Networking Roundtable. And this is an opportunity for you to deepen your network in the US, and specifically within the San Francisco Bay Area and the cyber community. And I can't emphasize enough the value of your US network, and how if you invest in your network, I've seen it lead founders to their first customer, their first partner. If you follow the bouncing ball of introductions, their first capital raise, really significant milestones that you need to achieve in the US. And then it's all culminating, the program will be culminating at your attendance at the RSA conference, which takes place in February next year. So it is an in-person conference, and there is also a virtual participation as well. So we would really love you to be able to get there in person and hustle and use all the skills and experience that you've learned through our program, the introduction, the preparation, and the engagement pieces. Use them on the ground in San Francisco, exposed to potential customers, again, building that relationship with VCs. And we're going to be collaborating with the feds, as I call them, Austrade. So we're still, working out. Obviously, they'll be having a presence at RSA, and we're really looking forward to working with them and your participation at RSA. I think that kind of sums up the program in its entirety for now. Can I hand back to you, Warwick?
Yes, thanks, Vicky, and thanks for that comprehensive rundown of the program. As you can see, it's quite in depth in terms of what it's aiming to provide to successful businesses that have applied for that program, and of course the culmination in terms of the business matching and the exposures through the RSA conference. We hope will be really successful for those businesses that are on the program in terms of building those connections, getting that first lead into those markets, or enhancing already well-established sort of commercial contacts that you may have there. Again, just want you to look at that program in the context of the market and where your business is at, and really give it strong consideration. I'm now going to hand over to Mike Newman, who is the Senior Trade and Investment Commissioner for North Asia. Mike joined us in July of this year in this role. First time in government, so he's got no blemishes just yet. He's got a long history of international business. Certainly has spent 2 decades in Japan, so he knows that market really well, and comes from an investment banking background. But I'll let him elaborate more about that, and he'll give you a full rundown in terms of the program for the Japanese market.
Thanks, Warwick. Welcome, everyone. I am very pleased to talk to you today about Investment New South Wales Cybersecurity to Japan stream. As Warwick mentioned, my name is Mike Newman. I'm the Senior Trade and Investment Commissioner for North Asia at Investment New South Wales. My background is a quarter of a century in investment banking, of which 20 of those years were in Japan. And in that time, I've been able to intricately get to know hundreds of companies across Japan and understand the corporate landscape from SMEs all the way up to the household brands you all would be familiar with: Sony, Panasonic, Toyota, etc. So our team looks at everything with a commercial lens, and we look forward to helping New South Wales companies in this cohort to prosper in Japan. As earlier pointed out, I was appointed in July of this year. I'll be heading hopefully to Japan towards the back end of November, and to build up a greatly expanded presence for New South Wales in that market. We're planning to go from 2 people on the ground in Tokyo to over 6 over the next 12 months. And it's with this expanded team that we'll be able to help you succeed when you participate in the cybersecurity stream. So looking at the Japanese opportunities, Japan's cybersecurity market was worth approximately 16.2 billion Aussie in 2019, and we expect that to grow to around 17.4 billion Aussie dollars by 2024. The increasing prevalence of security incidents, tax incentives, and the need for remote access are driving this growth. Now, research tells us that around 80% of companies in Japan have experienced at least one cybersecurity incident, and the Ministry of Economic Trade and Industry, which is otherwise known as METI, they've identified inefficiencies in business systems in Japan, particularly with on-premise legacy computer systems. And so METI is urging Japanese companies to switch to cloud-based systems by 2025. At the same time, COVID-19 has driven increased need for remote working environments and adoption of a zero trust security model among companies, meaning that devices pretty much shouldn't be trusted by default. So the market is growing, but its baseline is also relatively low. The fact is that corporate Japan lags behind many other markets in rolling out cybersecurity solutions. 65% of Japanese companies do not have a computer security incident response team in place, compared to around 11% amongst Australian and US companies. And also around 1/3 of Japanese companies do not have corporate security plans, compared to just 11% in Australia and 10% in the US. So the Japanese have a lot of catching up to do, and they know it, and this is where the opportunity lies. Another point to note is that the nature of Japanese market means your entry will generally require working with either a local distributor or system integrator. And our program is designed to help you make those connections. So who are we looking for? Japan is a country that values existing track record over pure technological prowess. So if you've got amazing technology, that's great. But if your amazing technology has been tried and tested in a market like the US or UK, then you really are in the sweet spot. And that said, we have to acknowledge that Japan can take time. Relationships are important. If you're willing to spend the time developing a relationship with a local partner, then you will be rewarded by long-term loyalty and success. We have conducted research to determine what technologies there is an immediate need for in Japan. And we see security stack solutions to protect an organization's IT networks and computer systems from malicious attackers, including identity and access management, such as identity-aware proxy to ease the VPN load to connect to systems as a service when working from home or remotely, mobile device protection, such as mobile application management or mobile device management to prevent large information leakage in BYOD situations, and also monitoring analysis such as security information and event management or endpoint detection and response to monitor and respond to security threats. Software products that help organizations defend their computer systems and IT networks against intrusion and unauthorized use are also part of that. So if this is you, then we're very keen to hear from you. So what will you get from the program? There are 2 virtual industry events in Japan that participant companies will be working towards. Innovation Leaders Summit in February 22. This is a key business matching event bringing together companies like yours with over 100 Japanese corporations, including distributors, system integrators, and clients. The other is Japan IT Week in April 2022. This is the largest B2B IT exhibition in Japan. To prepare you for these events, we will provide a range of information sessions and one-on-one support from December through February, covering things such as business culture training, market intelligence briefings, pitch development, interviews and support, and we'll also assist with translations of your materials. And following these 2 events, we will have a partner in Japan who will assist you with further one-on-one business matching for each of your companies. That wraps up my presentation, but I urge you to apply, and my team and I look forward to supporting you in tackling the Japanese market. And while sometimes it might seem daunting at first, the rewards longer term can be very large. Thank you. Back to you, Warwick.
Mike, thanks very much for that explanation and running through the program. As you can see, there are opportunities in these markets if you're willing to take up the baton and be a little risk-taking in terms of looking at those markets and looking at the opportunities there. Some may appear a bit daunting, as Mike said, but you know, again, I would just want to encourage people to look very seriously about the opportunity and certainly look at how we can, through this program, support your business to take advantage of it. There are a few elements in terms of criteria around involvement in the program and applying. They're not too onerous, but they are wrapped around our requirements. And one is that you are in a position where you are keen to go offshore, you are ready to do so. You've got a product that's ready to go. That is one part of the assessment process that we will look at. The other is the size of the business. This program here is to really try and get businesses that are up and running. So if you've got between 3 and 199 full-time equivalents on your payroll, you fit right in the slot. So that's a fairly wide bracket. And we hope most of you on the line are in that situation and looking to advance your global sales. And look, it may be that you're going the first time into a market, or you're already in a market and looking to diversify. Either of those situations are certainly what we're looking to try and help you with. And again, want to encourage you to look seriously at this program and apply if you think that it's the right market for you. The only other thing we would say is we're open to supporting businesses on a one stream basis, or one program basis, or one market basis. We found in the past where we've taken businesses on 2 streams at once, that can be a bit problematic. And whilst it opens up the opportunity of those businesses, we don't tend to maximise the opportunity in one market for that business. So one stream at a time. Applications are now open for the Japan stream and the US stream in cybersecurity, and they do close on the 5th of November. So just be aware of that as well. Now I'm going to open up to questions. Those questions can be placed into the chat function, and we'll pick those up. If there's not too many of those, then I'll hand it over to Vicky at the end of that to walk through any of the next steps that she's going to suggest that you might want to take up. So I'll just check the chat room now to see what we've got. Okay, the first question is relating to RSA in February and whether there's been a decision made by the federal government or the New South Wales government to have a stand. Vicky or Sean, I might just pass that to you to answer that question.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to, Vicky. At the moment, we're still working with Austrade to determine what a presence and what a program of events will look like around RSA physically. We should have a sort of final answer on that soon, but haven't made the final determination yet on a stand specifically.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, are we focusing on products are we focusing on products or services being the scope for the program as well? Sorry, Matthew, I'm a bit confused by that question that you've put up. If you wouldn't mind just retyping that, Matthew, I'll cover it off a little later. Can we confirm the FTEs? Sorry.
I was just going to say, Warwick, in terms of Matthew's question, I think, we really want to get to know what your business model is. So I think I'm happy to have a conversation with you, Matthew. I'm not sure whether you're interested in the US or Japan, but happy to take it offline, understand your business model more, because services definitely, are relevant. So, yes.
Okay, thanks, Vicky. The FTE limits at the moment are at 200 FTEs. Look, if you feel as though your business is in and around that, strictly speaking, might be a little less or a little more. Again, I'd urge you to maybe speak with Vicky about that and let's see where that lands. As I say, it's a pretty big guide between 3 and 200, but we have had on other programs inquiries from businesses that are maybe a little larger than 200 FTEs, but certainly we just want to talk to you about what your plans are, what your business model is, and maybe there's some accommodation we can make around that. Please share the link to the application. Okay, I think Jill has popped that down a little lower in the chat there, so that one has been shared. Minimum required for 3 FTEs, does the headcount need to be based on Australia or can they be overseas? Naturally enough, it's a New South Wales government program. Fundamentally, we're looking at increasing jobs in New South Wales, but we're trying to be as inclusive as we can around this. So it really is primarily set up for the headcount in New South Wales. But again, I would urge you maybe to talk to Vicky about your particular situation, and let's just see where that lands in terms of the underpinning details that sit behind your question. We have had businesses that have been based in New South Wales that do have an overseas office, or particularly in the food and beverage area, and we've accommodated them. So we're open to talking to people, but primarily we really are interested in trying to create economic growth for New South Wales and therefore jobs for New South Wales. I'm moving through. Are there any fees that companies may pay to participate in the export program? It's completely free in terms of the, let's say, the tuition program and the business matching piece. If there's any travel required, as Vicky alluded to, in terms of, say, the RSA conference and those sorts of things, those sorts of costs will be borne by your business if you choose to participate in those programs in that market, or in that conference in that market. But everything that we've presented to you in terms of the curriculum and the business matching components are all free of charge if you're successful on the program. Look, I'm just reading the question that's been asked by Andrew around the need to have an office in Japan to apply. Well, there's no need to have an office in Japan for an application, but I might just divert to you, Mike, in terms of the idiosyncrasies around locally engaged staff in Japan over the first 6 months. Maybe you've got a comment to make on that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Warwick. Look, I think having an office there at the beginning is not necessary, but I think over time, should you start to get traction with some of your clients, I think having locally based people certainly helps show the sign of commitment of your organisation in that market. There are obviously many ways to do that. If you are working through a system integrator, they probably can do that on your behalf. But in terms of, as long as you're getting the sort of, if you're feeling traction, I think it would only be obvious that you probably want to put, or at least have a regular visitor from headquarters to go in there to sort of help when you're visiting their potential clients. I really think that is helpful, because I think no one will sell your story better than yourselves. System integrators are obviously very helpful, but only you can answer what you can do in your headquarters. So that's how I would think of that. But certainly we'd be happy for you to lean on our office in Tokyo to help sort of manage on a case-by-case basis, because I think that's basically what will happen. Every sort of situation will no doubt be unique.
I just wanted to jump in and say that's exactly the kind of things and answers that we'll work through Going Global, and that's why the program's so valuable. Charbel, just in terms of talking about what your business needs are and what that looks like for your product and how that works through. So, sorry, there was a question about insurance, Charbel, but I think Andrew as well. Like, when they come to specific questions that relate to your business and your product and how that will fit, understanding the requirements, the bespoke nature of the Going Global program is relatively small for each of the streams, so that we can delve into those questions and start to answer them so that it relates to your product rather than a one-size-fits-all answer.
Can I add just a slight bit of color to what you said, Mike? From a US perspective, and probably from a Japan perspective as well, if you do have staff members overseas, just the flip side of that. So if you are a New South Wales business considering applying for this program to the United States, and you have a BD person or someone here in the US, and you're not going to travel for, you know, COVID or a variety of other reasons at the moment, you know, talk to us, because they can, you know, obviously be your point person at RSA or on the ground for on the ground business matching and on the ground business meetings. We're happy to sort of work with companies to do that as well, and that's actually probably a positive, obviously for your BD long term in the US to have a physical presence at RSA.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Lauren. The question that's been asked related to insurances in the US, one of the purposes of engaging, you know, expertise in country that's going to provide a lot of the business coaching will be to run through those elements that are problematic, as things such as insurance in that market. So if you join the program and you have that challenge, you should expect that to be able to be addressed to at least some degree in terms of that support from the experts in market. Jules just raised a clarification in terms of the FTEs. I think earlier I erroneously mentioned that the minimum was 3 FTEs for these two programs. In fact, it is actually 5. So my apologies for misleading there. I just wanted to clarify that. The reason being is that obviously we know that this area can be challenging, and we want to make sure that businesses do have the adequate resources to be able to take up the opportunity and maximise the position that we're trying to provide for them in terms of access to those markets.
And
so
just
again,
and just to say that's the equivalent. So if you have some people who are probably working potentially unpaid even, you know, through chipping in and helping in and doing a few hours each week contributing, make sure you consider that they're part of that as well. Don't forget the additional labor from a lot of our family and friends, particularly in small businesses that chip in to help do that. They shouldn't be discounted. You need to remember that if you have 4 or 5 people that are doing a couple of hours a week or potentially 1 or 2 hours a week, that cumulatively, that's the 5 overall. And I think we're quite, as Warwick was elaborating earlier, the idea of having these criteria is not to say no to people, it's to provide a guideline and understand who we're helping. So there is some flexibility. So if you have any questions about whether those FTE need to be based in Australia or overseas, I still think it's worth giving us a ring and or sending an email, and we can work through those issues and try and work out whether we can, you know, be accommodating as to how that works. Because I think the idea isn't to say no, it's just we've got to have a framework somehow, and we can try and work out where that fits. But as I said, it doesn't need to be full-time staff based only in New South Wales. There's potential for us to be flexible around how that's interpreted.
And it may be that we can engage with you in other ways as well. So that's the value of having the conversation. You know, more information, learning about what we do and what you're up to and what your particular situation is. If you don't fit completely into the slot in terms of that criteria, that's not the end of the situation. We're here to try and find ways in which we can help you to achieve those sorts of goals. So again, supporting what Lauren has just said. There's a question about the deadline of the start to engage with the program. Obviously, some of these programs are back-ended by an in-market event, so it all leads up to there. The important thing is to go to the website and have a look at the information there. So that's up on the screen at the moment. And the deadline, just again to reiterate, is the 5th of November in terms of getting your application in. So please have a look at the material that's on the website. Look to try and make some assessment about whether this program is for you. We think it's broad-based and can accommodate a lot of different types of businesses, and we really want to encourage you to have a positive look at it. But if you have any questions, again, we are open to really trying to answer those questions and to give you as much information for you to make that evaluation about your business and whether this program is going to work for you. Vicky, I think we've probably now exhausted the queries in the chat. I'm just going to throw to you in terms of, you know, what your next steps. We may have covered all of them, or there may be a few still to go, but I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Warwick. No, great questions from everyone. And yeah, just to reiterate really what Warwick said in terms of going to that link, seeing the eligibility criteria, and I would just urge you to have the conversation with me. So if you have any queries in your mind for both, the Japan market and the US market, please email me, and I can also, would love to have a conversation with you to discuss what that is. Because as Warwick said, Charbel, it would break my heart if not being able to get the right kind of insurance sort of stopped you from signing a deal with a US customer. So would love to, help work through that, what insurances you need, and, sort of make that happen. So in terms of this program, though, the deadline is the 5th of November. So you've got 2 weeks. Have a read over the weekend, and let's chat next week basically about next steps and your eligibility, and getting your application in, because we'd love to meet you. That's probably about it from me, Warwick, and everybody. Unless there's any more questions.
Unless there's any more questions, I'll pull it up there, and hopefully we'll be working with you all sometime in the near future. Looking forward to it. Thanks, everyone.